In our preceding segment, we talked about the importance and issues and the dynamics of interpersonal communication. Moving forward in this segment, let's find out how we can be better and more effective in one-on-one conversations. The first thing that I'd like to say here is that we need to be both conscious of the fact that we are in a one-to-one or interpersonal communication situation and the fact that we are professional. Okay? So the consciousness will allow you to slip into the professional persona. Okay? Sometimes it needs a little time. Like a Kathakali dancer, as he puts on his costume and makeup, he moves from being an ordinary person to the character that he is portraying in the dance drama. So like that, you have to assume consciousness and don the professionalism at all times by understanding the situation you're in and the role that you need to play. We talked about response rather than reaction. Always count to 10. Do not react. This is something that you can learn, and you can, as you practice it, you will get better at it. Okay? I have seen senior managers who never react. In the face of grave provocation, they still maintain their cool and come out with a response which is appropriate and realistic. Okay? This is something that you must understand. You know, the issue is this, is that when you receive a question or you receive a statement, it's intrinsic nature that you respond to it. Okay? That's because of the reptilian, the reflex action that we have. But you do not have to respond. Okay? Sometimes when confronted in a one-to-one conversation or in a one-to-small-many conversations, you don't put yourself under pressure. Sometimes you can say, I'll think about it. Can I get some time? Now that's a great idea. Give me a few minutes and I'll get back to you. So we do this in interviews sometimes, right? You get asked a question and you're not sure. What do? You ask the interviewer to give you a couple of moments. You defer the response. So do not pressure yourself that you have to respond. When we talk about managing questions, this issue will come up again, but don't put yourself under too much pressure. Sometimes you can ask for a deferment. Always keep cool. Do not mirror. Do not get aggressive, even if there's nothing coming from the other side, but stay cool. And try, and sometimes we're so full of ourselves, we don't see what's happening to the other person. Use your nonverbal skills to actually understand what you can tell a lot about a person. If a person is angry, or a person is sad, or a person is depressed, or a person is not in the mood, it shows. But you need to be sensitive to not just what they're saying, but also the way they look, to actually manage the conversation and not let it break down. This is what happens in many conversations break down and they get nowhere. So keeping a conversation afloat is also aided by knowing the emotional state of the other person. And always, in a professional manner, you are not criticizing the individual. In a professional persona, in that situation, you always are evaluating the performance of that person. How well did this person do what he or she was supposed to do? Not, is she a good person, or is she a bad person, or is he depressed, or is he off his head, or stuff like that. And this is what happens. When we let the professional persona, the mask, slip off our faces, we start criticizing the person or evaluating the person rather than the performance or what actions of that person. The other thing that I would ask you to do, and if many of you are going to be startup managers, you're going to have people working for you. it's important that as you deal with people, you be consistent. I mean, being truthful is of being consistent, okay? And I think that when you conduct interpersonal interactions with other people or with the same person on a continuing basis, you need to be consistent. You can't chop and change, and you can't do different things, and you can't go back on what you said. नहीं नहीं वो तो कल था आज अलग है. Now people do this. I've seen managers do this. That was yesterday. No, let's talk about today. Now that doesn't work. It does not build trust, and it does not build motivation in other people to do their work. So very important. As much as you keeping on cool is keeping your language and tone courteous. Okay, this is important. There's one thing that we talked about earlier is the direct and indirect approaches. And there we talked about the fact that certain people from certain cultural milieu do not like the direct approach because they consider it rude. Now, as a corollary to that is the concept of face. People from Eastern cultures, including Indians, we have this concept of face. What happens basically is that we find it difficult to separate our individual persona from our work persona. Westerners do this very well. But you, I, Chinese people, Thais, Cambodians, etc., all have a problem because their picture of themselves is very tightly coupled to both the persona. So when you criticize somebody, they take it personally, right? And you and I have done this many, many times. You don't scold people or say things in front of others because they will lose face in the eyes of others. Now, so self-image is very important. So when you're interacting with people, especially people from Eastern cultures, be very clear that you talk in such a manner and a tone and use content which allows them to preserve their face, their positive self-image of themselves, and you do not belittle people while you converse with them. I've seen a lot of managers do this, and they do it deliberately to actually pull the other person down. But preserving face is important, okay? After all, you work with these people, they are your colleagues, they may even be your friends outside of work or at different times. But preserving face, being courteous, being kind is very, very important. We are, after all, human beings, okay? Very, very important. Genuineness, honesty, openness. Now, it may sound like sob story 101, but the fact of the matter is that's what builds great companies, okay? That's very important. And finally, listen to what the other person is saying. This is a big issue, is that in interpersonal conversations, we are actually not listening. We're going to talk about this later on as a skill associated with interpersonal communication. But we need to listen to what is said carefully, and equally importantly, what is not said. This is a skill that you can start learning from right now that you're conscious of the need to listen to what is said and what is not said. Start now. A few other points that I'd like you to keep in mind that will help you to improve your interpersonal interaction is be prepared. Okay, if you're going to have a meeting, set it up properly, give it some time, and actually think about it or make notes or gather the evidence. This is very important. I've had situations of ethical misconduct by people who worked in my company, and I had to confront them with that. I have to have the evidence, I have to have the witnesses, I have to have all the other things. I can't just go in there and have a conversation saying, you're a bad guy. I have to actually have to be prepared for the meeting, okay? Another thing that I would ask you to do is, in your professional persona, say only as much as is needed and then zip it. Okay? Do not talk too much. Do not waffle on. Do not try to explain things that don't need explanation. And do not volunteer information. Do not say things that were not asked for. And I've seen this amongst really, I would say, effectively top management and leaders. They don't gossip, they don't make small talk, and they don't make personal comments. Now, this is very interesting. You're a manager and you're there. You want to make small talk, go home and do it. Go to the pub and do it. Go to the club and do it, wherever. Why in the office? This is something that I'd like you to think about. Be businesslike, be nice, friendly, courteous, everything, but be businesslike. Stick to the knitting and get on with it. Okay? Very, very important. And finally, one of the things that I believe you need to do in order to be a really good interpersonal communicator is to adopt an assertive style. So, you've heard this term, and to put it in perspective, there are a number of behaviors, behavioral styles. And behavior and communication are joined at the hip. They're a gestalt. They're integral whole. You can't separate them. Now, when you look at behavioral styles and the attendant communication that goes with it, you will see that there are a number of styles. Now, it's not a discussion on styles, but typically what we see in organizations are domineering styles, aggressive styles, passive or passive-aggressive styles, assertive styles, and submissive styles. There is a lot of reading that you can do on your own on this, and I do believe I have provided some references to do that. But what works best? What is the most stable of these behavioral and communication styles? Aggressive, dominant is negative, it's bad. Submissive is terrible. That means that the person just rolls over and plays dead. That person is of no use to any organization. Okay? And aggressive is what a lot of people practice. And passive is when people don't say anything, but internally the pressure cooker is building up. At some point, these people blow, and it becomes very ugly at that point. Now, therefore, all these styles of communication and behavior, other than the assertive style, are unstable and non-viable styles in the long run. And therefore, I would ask you to think about assertive communication in interpersonal interaction. And assertive communication can be developed by improving your self-esteem, by being conscious of who you are. It's born of high self-esteem. It's considered the most effective style of behavior and communication. And it's described as the sweet spot between being aggressive and being passive. Let me give you my favorite example of assertiveness. You are a line person, the person who sits on a tennis court and has to look at whether the ball was in or out. Now, who's playing on the tennis court is immaterial. Whether it's Djokovic versus some Leclerc or somebody else, or the person, you as the line manager have only to say whether the ball is in or out. It's got nothing to do with who is playing. Now, you can't let Djokovic break his racket on your head so that you change your judgment on whether the ball was in or out. So an assertive person understands that they have a job to do, and that's the job to do. That's what a professional does. They assert themselves. They're not aggressive. They're not submissive. But they do their job because it's their job, and they do it correctly and without favor or any other form of submissiveness. The funny thing is, by the way, research shows that the assertive style is actually the least used style. So that's why I am talking to you about this. We need to be assertive. So assertiveness is about confidence and self-confidence, and something that accumulates as you practice assertiveness. It's don't give in, push back. This is what, if somebody says, can you finish these 43 files before day after tomorrow? If you're submissive, you say, okay, and decide to tell your family that you're not coming home this weekend. If you're aggressive, you'll yell and scream at your boss and say, what the hell do you think this is? I have better work to do. You're blah, 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 blah. And that makes it only worse for you, right? So pushing back is standing your ground, which says, okay, I'll finish these 43 files, but then I want 3 days off next week. I won't come in on Monday and Tuesday. If I have to work over the weekend, I'll do it later. So negotiation is a way of actually being assertive by saying yes, but. Okay? The other thing that comes up with assertiveness is questioning, which says, why me? Why? Okay, so I've seen this happen with software companies talking to their clients abroad. And the meeting, at the end of the meeting, the Indian team, and I've been sitting with the Indian team and looking at their behavior and communication, they are pounded down to molecular level. The client they've agreed to everything the client said. And there's another big meeting immediately after the client meeting to figure out how in God's name they're going to deliver on all the commitments that they agreed to. It's pathetic. Okay? But understand that if somebody says, I need this by day after tomorrow, ask the question, why? Let them give you a response. At least they know you're not a pushover. You're not going to just agree to what is being said. You are asserting yourself. Why me is a good question. Can I get some help to do it? Can I take next Tuesday off if I do this? Children are the best negotiators, okay? You ask them to clean their room, then they'll ask to see TV. Absolutely, we must learn. We've forgotten how to negotiate. We've forgotten how to be assertive. The moment somebody says do something, we say, Hanji, and get on with it, right? That's not assertiveness. And I've seen this happening with bosses and subordinates. I've seen this with clients and service providers. Assertiveness is important, okay? Please work on this. Learn how to do it. Attend class if you need to, but get in it. And therefore, I'd like to spend a few minutes on this thing which Indians find the most difficult to do. Westerners have no compunction, but Indians cannot say no. And so we get pounded, right? And here's what Warren Buffett had to say about it. You probably heard of Warren Buffett, probably the most respected investor anywhere in the world, the prophet of Omaha, and one of the richest people on earth. And he says the difference between successful people and really successful people is that the really successful people say no to almost everything. Now, saying no does not mean just saying no. It's not shutting the door. It says, Papa, can I have ice cream? No, but I'll give you vegetables. You still said no, and you've started this process of negotiation, right? We don't do it. When kid asks for ice cream, we just hit them on the head with it, okay? But so there's no, and there's no, and there's no, okay? And it's one of the hardest things to do. And many people come and ask me, how do I go about a conversation where I have to say no? And there is a structure attached to this, okay? And it's a negative direct approach, which if somebody says, Papa, can I have ice cream? The answer is no. And typically you should get the no up front. Then you have options, okay? We'll come back to that. So say no and say, here are 3 reasons why you can't do this. Can I have leave tomorrow, sir? No, I'm afraid not. As you know, end of quarter is coming up. We are behind on our targets, or a visitor is coming in, or you have not completed the work that I had assigned to you. Therefore, you cannot have leave. That's the bottom line. But if you wish to negotiate, you can suggest alternative approaches. I used to have a manager, Mr. Som Mittal. He was probably one of the best managers I've ever worked with. And you went to him with a proposal, something or the other, and like Warren Buffett, he would end up with a no, but he would always suggest, Bringy, no, you cannot have ice cream, but you can do this. No, I cannot give you the money to buy a new projector, but we could rent one. Now, very simply, he said no, but he's also given me a way out, right? This is very, very nice way to do it. Every time I had a meeting with Som and I left the room, about 5 minutes later, I realized, actually he said no. But he made me feel so good about it and gave me so many other things to do, other ways of looking at the problem, that I felt really good about it. But bottom line was, he said no. Okay? So that's how leadership works, and that's how saying no works. Okay? And you don't need to be apologetic. This is not a person-to-person thing. It's professional, right? You can't have the leave not because I don't like you, but you can't have the leave because work exigencies do not permit me to grant you leave of absence. You don't have to be apologetic about it. And if you put it across nicely, people will buy it. Okay, they're trying. Sometimes people fish. They go and put in a request, and they know that you're not going to say yes all the time, and so there's a certain amount of hit and miss in this. And as I said, be polite and firm because it's not personal. And having said no, tell them, look, I'm sorry, but I can't do anything about it. You can add a personal note or a positive up-looking note which says, if it weren't the end of quarter, we could have considered this. But unfortunately, this is not possible. Let's see how we can plan it better next quarter so that you get some time off when you actually need it. This is a great way to say no. The other thing that happens in interpersonal communication is you get ambushed. And I talked about being prepared. It's a strategy that people use to catch you unaware. They ambush you. When you're standing at the water cooler, he'll come and make a request. Okay, I've seen this happen. They will try and get you off balance, catch you at a time at which you're vulnerable to acquiescence, to saying yes. So don't allow yourself to get ambushed. Assertiveness says, okay, I got your question, but this is not the right time to discuss this. I haven't had time to think about it. Send me the back papers. Do you think we can have a discussion in my room 20 minutes from now? Okay? Say you will get back or defer the decision, ask for time to think the matter, ask for a proper planned meeting, right? And ask for the back papers so that you can prepare for it. Don't let people ambush you. Now, in formal meetings, as we will learn about in a segment from now, we submit agenda, we submit work lists, discussion points. These are all things that we do. So similarly, don't walk into the meeting and suddenly people start raising issues that you were not expecting to be discussed. So plan your interaction and try and prepare for it. Understand that you need to be assertive. This is very important, and this is a key factor, and that's why I've spent time in the last few minutes talking about it. Okay? Being a good, assertive, interpersonal communications person takes time and conscious effort. It's not easy, and it's very easy for me to say it. I've spent my whole life trying to be that way, okay? So you can do it too. Start now, plan and prepare. Be assertive. Read more about this in Communicating for Results, Chapter 12. I've marked out the pages. And thank you very much for listening.